This season, I love this season because, the temperatures are changing, the decorations are going up, the calorie intake is going to skyrocket. This season, I love this season because it's kind of labeled as the most wonderful time of the year. If you listen to songs and watch commercials, there's just something magical about this season. And it's kind of told to us that it's full of peace and joy and memories and laughter. And I'm going like, do y'all have kids? Because I don't know if this season is really marked like that. It's more, this season for many of us is marked by extra workloads and time crunch to get ready for the end of the year. And we have to work twice as much so that we can be off for Christmas. And it's stressful and there's debt and credit cards and all this stuff that happens. And it's really not the most magical time of the year. For many of us, it's the most stressful time of the year. And it's hard and it's difficult and you have to be with your family all the time. And you all know that weird uncle that you try to avoid every other day of the year, but you get trapped with that man for hours. It's painful. And this season, again, it's pitched as this magical time, but for many of us, it's a really just stressful time. And it's for that reason we're starting a new series called Hollow Days, because for many of us, this season is not fulfilling and fun and enjoyable. It's really stressful and, for honest, just kind of hollow. It's lacking meaning. And in this series, I want us to go from a hollow season to really a holy season, a season that's set apart, a season that's enjoyable, a season that adds life to you and doesn't just drain you. And so in this series, we're going to talk about that. How does this season not just be another stressful season so we can make a bunch of New Year's resolutions and hopefully change next year? And we're going to move from this hollow season to more of a holy season. And this whole idea is really built on this verse in Jeremiah 6:16. It says this. It says, "Thus says the Lord, stand by the roads and look." They're at a cross. So it says, "And ask for the ancient paths, where the good way is, and walk in it, and you'll find rest for your soul." But they said, yeah, we're not going to do that. And see, the ancient paths that the writer is referring to is not the good old days that our parents grew up in. It's not even the good old days that the disciples grew up in. He's really referring all the way back to the beginning, which is God. Because if we want to have a holy season and a helpful season, we have to go all the way back to the beginning with a holy God. And he set up our lives in a way that he would be the center of it, that he would be what fulfills us and where we find satisfaction. And if we look back, all the way back in the book of Exodus, we find the nation of Israel is being formed. And they were slaves in Egypt for over 400 years. And Moses, their leader, is just now taking charge. And God establishes a brand new calendar for his people. And in this calendar, he built 7 festivals, or holy days, or holidays, that was just built into their calendar. And God was adamant that they would celebrate these festivals. That you have to do it. He even offered punishments if they refused to celebrate. And he make you go like, why is God so specific about this partying? There's a couple reasons I think that he's so adamant about that. The first one is he built into their calendar these festivals because he knew that you and I needed breaks. Like you and I need some time to rest our souls. And he built into their calendar these specific rests because he knew that we needed it. See, the children of Israel were slaves for 400 years, and he's like, hey, y'all need to rest and realize that I'm your provider. Like you get a day off. As a slave, they got no days off. They got no time off. There was no 15-minute break every couple hours. There was no, national law that required certain things you just worked, and you worked hard, and if you didn't work hard, you got punished. So he knew they needed breaks, and in addition to that, he set up these festivals because he knew that we needed fun. Now, you might not think of God as like the fun giver, but he actually is. If you look at it, he's telling them to celebrate and to enjoy life. If your beliefs about God don't include fun, you're probably serving the wrong God. Because the life that God has for us should have fun in it. The third thing, he knew that we needed time to reflect. So you and I, we're really bad at remembering the good things God's done in our lives. If we're honest, we're really good at remembering the hard seasons, the difficult things, the stress. We're great at remembering that. Sometimes we struggle, though, to remember God's goodness, to remember his grace, to remember his favor on our lives. See, God created holy days because he knew we needed them. We needed time to rest and recommit and relax. But over the years, we've kind of lost sight of what holidays were meant to be. For the children of Israel, these 7 festivals built into their calendar, and you and I, built into our calendar, are times of celebration, and we're entering in it. From Halloween, which is too much candy, thank God for the dad tax, which gets me all their candy, and then Thanksgiving, and then Christmas. I mean, it's just a great time to celebrate, to relax and enjoy. And today what I want to talk to you, though, about is, so we're going to look at this idea of these festivals, and we're going to look at the main pictures of them, or the main ideas communicated through them. And as we see them, because there's so many details with these 7 festivals for the children of Israel, we can't just go one by one and tell you all the details, but we're going to give you the specific principles, kind of all throughout all of them, that highlight how do we move from a hollow season to more of a holy, fulfilling season. And so with that, we're going to look at specifically how sacrifice can lead to a holy season. Now, you might look at that and be like, you're kidding, right? Like, the more I give, the more I sacrifice, you're telling me it's going to be more fulfilling? That's what this season is all about. It's all about everybody else and giving gifts and party planning. I don't need to sacrifice nothing else. I'm stressed as can be. But if you follow with me, if you track with me, I think this idea of sacrifice is going to lead us to a fulfilling season, not a stressful season. And to show you this principle, we have to go back to the book of Exodus. So if you have your Bible or your phone, we'll be in Exodus chapter 12. And the very first festival or holiday that the children of Israel had to celebrate was this festival called Passover. And the very first Passover was instituted in Exodus chapter 12. Let me just give you the backstory. The children of Israel were leaving Egypt. God was delivering them from slavery. And there was 10 plagues that kept coming against Egypt because the Egyptian Pharaoh would not let the people go. And so God's punishing them, like, hey, you got to let them go, got to let them go, let them go. The last one was this plague that was going to kill the firstborn child of every home in Egypt and the firstborn animal in every home in Egypt. And God instituted Passover, which was this. They had to take an animal, they had to kill that animal, and then they would take the blood and they would put it over their doorposts, and when death came that night and would kill all the firstborn, if you had the blood of the lamb on your doorpost, it would pass over you, and you would skip the judgment of God. And so he's instituting this, and he's telling them, like, hey, this is how I want you to do this, because judgment's coming, and I want to protect my people from that judgment. So this is how you have to do it. And we pick it up in Exodus chapter 12. He gives the specifics about the Passover in verse 5. It says, the animal that you must select must be a 1-year-old male, either a sheep or a goat with no defects, and you have to take special care of this chosen animal. See, to celebrate the very first holiday in their calendar, God asked them to sacrifice something significant. See, something precious had to be given if they were going to move into a significant season and not just a hollow season. And my point with that is, if we're going to move into that, we have to give what's valuable, not what's convenient. We have to give what's valuable, not what's convenient. And see, they had to, specifically, there were some specifics about that. They had to do a 1-year-old male lamb, had to have no spots, no blemishes. And see, for them, it was costly. So sometimes with Bible stories, we lose the nuance of it because it's like, who's got some goats? I offended all the goat, owners in the room. Like, there's like 3 of you that you might have a goat. You got a farm. Like, most of us can't relate to that. But for them, this was something precious. This was something costly. This was something important. Not only that, it was their best. And they had to give their best. And think of their mindset. I'm sure they didn't want to give their best. Why? Because their best could be used for breeding, which would set them up for long-term success. And God's like, no, I want the best. Notice they did not give like the one with 2 legs and 1 eye, and it's like limping, all the way to them. They gave their best, not what was broken. See, it wasn't like Passover was coming and they're like, hey, babe, let's empty the closet and let's sacrifice all the junk that we don't want and make a Goodwill run. You got someone to take your junk that you didn't have to do anything with. You didn't have to sell it. That's not what they did. It wasn't a Goodwill run. It was their best. And they had to give it what was valuable, not what was convenient. And I think, to be honest with us, I think some of the reason we struggle to give our best to God and to others is because our identity many times is wrapped up in what we have. That our identity is wrapped up in our possessions. And if you reserve what is best for you first, that makes sense. It makes sense that you give yourself what's best, you prioritize yourself. That makes sense. But you can't live a significant life if you're always getting what's best for yourself. If you're always number one, your schedule is what's most important. Your money is what's most important. Your gifts for yourself is what's most important. If you are number one in your life, that makes sense, but you're choosing a life without significance. You're choosing a life that's comfortable personally, but helps no one else in the process. See, many of us live dissatisfied lives, and buying things is this coping mechanism for our dissatisfied life. Let me help you out for a second. The reason you have to buy that new thing to show all your friends is not because you just need that new thing and want that new thing and deserve that new thing. You need their approval of you. That's why you care so much about it. And what's tricky and what highlights in this season is that if you go from new thing to new thing because you're inwardly dissatisfied and you're coping with your frustration in life with, oh, I deserve this because I earned this. I just need something. I need some me time and some me gifts and some me things. If it's all about you, what you'll find in buying those things and doing those things, it just leaves you doing it again. Buying it again. That's why you have 14 of the same thing. That's why you have to buy another dress, and you haven't worn the last 4 you bought. That's why you have to buy the latest gadget, because you can tell someone about the new thing. That's why you have to go from a 65-inch TV to a 75-inch TV. That's why in a couple days on Good Friday, you're going to sit in line to get some off-brand TV that nobody wants. It's going to break in a few days anyway. To make yourself, look at my big old TV that works sometimes because it's this off-brand from China. And it's like, come on. Like, no one ever heard about that brand. And like, anyway, I'm moving on. See, our holidays, for many of us, just amplify the dysfunction that we're looking at things to fill our soul. See, that's why many of us, like, we'll go on a vacation or a trip with the family, and we enjoy that, but we care just as much about enjoying that vacation as we do about posting about it, because I want you to like how much I spent on my vacation just as much as I want to enjoy the vacation. Because I got to brag about, look, we did this, and we did this, and we did this. What if you went on vacation and didn't tell everybody about it? What if you just enjoyed your vacation instead of flexing on everyone at how nice what you spent was? See, many of us, we even do this with our kids with this holiday season. We brag about the gifts we bought our kids because I'm flexing on you that I'm successful. Oh, look at what we bought our kids. We got the PS5 and the brand new Call of Duty. And in this season, if all you focus on is gifts, you'll miss out on what's significant, because you have to give what's precious and what's valuable, not what's convenient. And the most precious commodity you have is your time, your attention, and your words. Why is that most precious? Because once I give my time, I can't give it back. Once I give my attention, it's gone. And once I give my words, I can't retract them. What's most precious is not what's in your wallet. What's most precious is your time, your attention, and the words that you speak. So I'm not just talking about gifts. I'm talking about, see, you could buy your kids the best Christmas present they ever have, but if you ignore them while they're on Christmas vacation, you've missed the point. They don't need another thing, they need their mom. They don't need another thing, they need their dad. Your friends don't need another gift and they need to send them, their Cash App, like, oh, Christmas coming up, Cash App, send it to me. Like, you don't need that. What you need is time with people. Because if you give the best gift, but you ignore what's most precious, you've missed out on what's significant. See, this is why Jesus says in Acts 20:35, he says, it is more blessed to give than to receive. The more mature I get, the more I realize this to be true. Like, I like gifts, I like free stuff. Like, who don't like free stuff? I like free stuff. I love things I don't have to buy. You buy me some Jordans, we are friends. But the older I get, the more I realize it's not about getting. I find joy in giving. Because it's actually more blessed to give than to receive. See, the second thing we notice in this Passover, though, is they had to kill the lamb, and with that, something costly had to die. And we live in a totally different culture to where we're not killing lambs and we're not sacrificing lambs. I think the most expensive thing you and I have to learn to kill is our will. Like, your will has to be sacrificed daily. Like, you have to die to yourself. You have to die to what you want. You have to die in thinking like what I think, what I want, what I desire is best. See, how you entered the Christian life, if you're a follower of Jesus in here, is through Luke 9:23 and 24. Jesus said, if anyone wants to be my follower, he must deny himself, pick up his cross daily, and follow me. And then he says this, if you want to find life, if you want to find fulfillment, you can't hold on to your life. You actually have to lay it down. Many of us, I would say, I want to find life, I want to find fulfillment, I want to find enjoyment. Jesus prescribes to us how to have that, and it's to die to yourself. You have to lay down your will. You have to give it away. See, if you go through this season and it's all about you, you'll wind up realizing it's just empty. Because you have all these expectations that are unmet, and therefore you leave frustrated. Let me help all the married people. Unmet expectations are resentments waiting to happen. And uncommunicated expectations is just silly. If you don't tell me what you want, you ain't getting it. Trying to help all the marriages for a second. I just need you to know. I need you to know you're going to get nothing if you don't communicate it. Anyway, moving on. Philippians 2:3 says this. He says, don't be selfish. I think I offended all the women. Like, I apologize. I care about your marriage more than your feelings. But anyway, Philippians 2:3 says, don't be selfish. Don't try to impress others. Be humble. Thinking of others is more important than yourselves. Did you know every room you walk in, if you had the mind of Christ, you would be least important, not most important? What are you telling me? Jesus said when you go to a wedding feast, don't sit at the table where all the important people sit. Go to the lowest table. He says, think of others. Like, everyone I see is more important than me. Write that down. Everyone I see is more important. It even rhymed. I mean, come on. Like, I am working up here. Everyone you see, they're more important than me. Like, I put others above myself. That I take the low road. Husbands, when you come home, yeah, you're the leader of your home according to Scripture, but you lead by being the lowest. You lead by serving. You lead by laying down your life. You lead by the moment you get home after a stressful day, you go ahead and clean up the dishes. You lead by the moment you get home, you get on the ground and you play with your kids. You don't check out because I've had a hard day. You're the leader, and by being the leader, you're now the lowest. I think too many times husbands want the right of their authority, but they don't want the responsibility to be the lowest. You want to be in charge? Serve. This isn't a marriage series, but I'm helping you out nonetheless. See, most of the time, I love getting able to communicate, and most of the time, I get to tell you, like, all the dumb things that I do, and I get to tell on myself, because I'm a human, I screw up just like you do. But today, I get to tell you one of my wife's stories about how she needs to grow up. And so, I have her permission. She said I don't have to sleep on the couch for 3 days if I tell this story. She's fine with it. But we were dating, this was 13 years ago. We just had our anniversary of when we got engaged in October. And it was 13 years ago. 13 years ago we got engaged. And so anyway, while we were dating, I refused to let her pay for anything if I was around. So if we went to dinner, I paid for it. If she was shopping in the mall, I paid for it. Like, I just refused. Call me old school if you want, but I think maybe some men should still do these kind of things. And so I just refused to let her pay for anything. It didn't matter if whatever we were doing, I paid for it. Because I wanted to communicate to her, if we ever got married, I can provide for our family. Like, I got you. I can take care of you. I can take care of us. I got you. And so I just refused to let her pay for anything. And so we went through, and then we get engaged, and she's finally like, we're spending, money on food and money on all this different stuff, and she's kind of like, we're going to merge our finances anyway. Like, why don't you just let me pay for some stuff? And it just felt like a violation of who I was, but I was like, all right, fine, you can pay for dinner sometimes, it's okay. And so one night we're at dinner, and we just have a terrible server, if I'm honest. Like, this poor lady just should not be a server because she's not good at nothing, like, serving-wise. Like, our food is late, the drinks are never refilled, she has a bad attitude. I mean, it's just bad. And it was Megan's turn to pay, and so she was telling me how she wasn't going to tip her that well. And I was like, man, this is why I pay for things. Like, ooh. And so I'm telling her, I was like, sweetheart, like, we don't give people, like, you don't know what's going on with her. Like, she could be just having a bad day. Maybe she's just really not good at her job, obviously, and she's learning. Maybe she's in training. Like, you need to tip her. Like, you just don't know what's going on with her. And Megan, and it's to be honest, it makes sense how she was acting. She was like, I'm not going to do that because she hasn't earned a good tip. So I was in ministry at this point, and I went all super spiritual on her. I was like, here's the deal. You are going to tip her. You are going to tip her well. And the reason you're going to do that is because we're Christians. And as Christians, we have received a ton of grace from God that we did not deserve and we cannot earn. Therefore, we give people not what they earned. What we give people is what they don't deserve, because Jesus, thank God Jesus is not acting like you in this moment, because Jesus gave regardless of our earning. So I kind of rebuked her a little bit. She took it like a champ. I was a little aggressive back then. I don't even know why she married me still. And she took it. She was like, you're right. I don't know. Because here's the deal. It makes sense to give people what they deserve. That makes sense. But it makes you like Christ to give people what they don't deserve. And we are Christ's followers. We are his ambassadors. And we don't give people what they've earned if we're going to be like Jesus. Here's the next thing about the Passover lamb. You had to sacrifice something, and it had to be completely consumed. See, what they would do is they would either eat the lamb or they would give it to their neighbors to eat the lamb. And if neither of them kind of ate the whole lamb based on their family size, they then had to offer it as an offering to God. So it was completely consumed. And what my point with that is this. They consumed that lamb. And you and I, if we're going to live lives of sacrifice, we have to make it a lifestyle to where it's a part of us, not a season. See, if you give in the impact offering, and I hope you do, you need to. Not because we need your money, like we just want to make a difference. I hope you do that. But if the only time you give is seasonally, you've missed the point. Jesus laid down his life. Every day he says, not my will, your will. He says, I don't even say anything. I don't hear the Father saying. I don't do anything. I don't hear the Father doing. His life was in obedience to another source. And if we're going to follow him, we have to sacrifice and lay down our lives. To make this point, I need someone's help. You're actually going to come on stage, so raise your hand if you can help me out with something. Ivis, why don't you come up here, Ivis? Come on, give it up for Ivis. Now, Ivis, here's the deal. For this analogy to work, you have to give me $100. No, really, come on. You have to, no, I'll take Cash App, Venmo, whatever. No, I'm kidding. I actually have the $100 for this analogy to work. And so, see, with this, I'm going to give you this $100, and here's the only stipulation. You have to take this $100, and within 24 hours, you have to give it away to someone. Can you do that?
Of course.
Okay. You notice how easy it was for him to give away my money? Know how hard it was for him to give me money? What's true, though, is whether he would have given me the money or he takes this money and he gives it away, he's still out $100. He's giving $100 regardless. He was either going to give it to me or I'm going to give it to him, and then he's going to give it away. He's giving $100 regardless. What changed and made it easy is that he saw this $100 as a gift. So it's easy to give away something when you view it as a gift that's not yours. And what is my point with that? The breath in your lungs is a gift from God. The beating heart you have in your chest, which is held by God's sovereign hand, is a gift from God. The skills that you have that earn you the money that's in your bank account is a gift from God. Everything in your life is a gift from God, and if you view it as that, God's not taking anything from you. He's letting you steward that which is His. Amen. And it's easy to give away what's not mine in the first place. So you have to give this $100 to someone this week. Let me know how it goes. But can you give it up for Ivis? See, what's true in that analogy, I wasn't taking anything from him. And God's not taking anything from you because everything you have is His. He's not a thief. It says the enemy is like a thief. God is a giver. And everything you have is ultimately His. And when He asks you to give some time, some money, some resources, some attention, whatever He asks you to give, it's because He wants to use you to make a difference in someone else's life. And it's not yours anyway. Get your hands off it. Stop being so stingy. What I noticed this is a grateful person is a generous person. See, if I viewed everything I owned as God's, it would make me grateful and it would make me generous. I'm grateful for everything He's given me, and I'm generous because I get to use it to advance His mission in the earth. Show me an ungrateful person, and I'll show you a stingy person. When you have a heart of gratitude, it's easy to give. Because again, it's not yours anyway. Here's my last thought. Nothing was allowed to be wasted. So with the lamb, they had to kill it. They had to eat it. Then if they had leftovers, they had to give it to their friends. If they're not, they had to give it as an offering to God. Nothing was allowed to be wasted. Let's read in Exodus 12:9. It says, the whole animal, including the head, the legs, the internal organs, must be roasted over a fire. Don't leave any of it until the next morning. Burn whatever is not eaten before morning. And here's my point with that. Because it had to be completely consumed and could not be wasted, your sacrifice is never insignificant. It's never wasted. When you give something to God as a sacrifice, it's never wasted. There's nothing left because you've given it to Him. Think of it this way. I want you to catch this. Every sacrifice that you make is really a seed sown, waiting as a harvest to be reaped. Every sacrifice you make is like planting a seed in the ground, waiting to reap a harvest. It's never wasted. Every time you say yes to Jesus, He takes it and He uses it to advance His kingdom. Whether small or big, whether $1 or an hour, whatever you give to God, He uses it, and it's never, ever wasted. I love this part because I'm reminded of just yesterday. Our church, we did an event called Holiday Blessing, where we brought in over 903 different people across all 3 of our campuses, and 267 people on the Dream Team served our community, and we gave them everything they would need for Christmas. We gave them what they would need for food. We set up a room. I love this. We set up a room and let kids shop for presents for their parents. We set up another room and let parents shop for presents for their kids. We fed them breakfast, and as they left, we gave them a big gift card that said, go get whatever you need for Christmas this season. But my favorite part of that whole thing is we gave a bunch of practical things away. But my favorite part of the whole thing, there was a room that was set up. We called it our prayer room. And we weren't pushy or weird with it, but we said, hey, if you need prayer, we'd love just to pray with you. Because we don't want to just provide for people naturally, we also want to help them spiritually. So there's a prayer room set up, and it was in that prayer room that 13 people gave their lives to Jesus Christ yesterday. See, every time you give, it either helps another person or it helps you, but it's never wasted. See, Jesus tells this parable in Matthew 25. He says, at the end of the age, and he's describing what it would look like, he said, there's going to be people who come to me, and they're going to say, and I'm going to thank them. I'm going to thank them because they visited me when I was in prison. I'm going to thank them because they clothed me when I was naked. I'm going to thank them because they took care of me and invited me into their homes. And at the end of the age, everyone's going to look at him and be like, Jesus, when did we see you and naked and clothe you? When did we see you in prison and visit you? When did we invite you as a stranger into our home? And Jesus is going to look at him and say this beautiful phrase. He says, when you did it to the least of these, you've done it to me. Because there's this verse in Proverbs 19:17. It says this. It says, if you help the poor, you are lending to the Lord, and he will repay you. How awesome that I get to give to God, lend to him, and he gets to bless people through me. How awesome is that? But see, the whole crux of this message lands on one verse. So how do we live this life of sacrifice? And maybe you're sitting here like, Justin, I get what you're saying, but it's harder than you think. See, the reason you and I are able to live a life of sacrifice is because we serve a Savior who sacrificed his life for me and you. Think of it this way. What would, if Jesus walked in this room and asked you for something, time, money, encouragement, is there anything he could ask for that would be too much? No. Why? Because of how much he's already given you. He says when you serve them, when you encourage them, when you financially bless them, it's as if you're doing it to me. See, we sacrifice because Jesus sacrificed. And we read this in John 10:18. It's the last verse of the day. It says, no one can take my life from me. I sacrifice it voluntarily. And I think the most beautiful picture of this whole Passover festival and all the beautiful typologies, what we see most in this is Jesus. See, Jesus is our Passover lamb. Let me break that down. What do I mean by that? It means that the Passover lamb, you read it, had to be a mature male. And Jesus, when he died for us, he was a mature male. Leading up to Passover, they would set aside the lamb on a very specific day because, again, Passover was a holiday that happened every year. And in preparation for Passover, the killing of this lamb and the sprinkling of the blood, and in preparation for that, they would set aside this lamb on a very specific day. And did you know that Jesus came into Jerusalem on that day? And then with Passover, because it was a holiday and it was every year, they would set aside the lamb and they would kill it on a specific day. And they would kill that lamb on a specific time of day. And what's interesting is that while you heard the lambs being killed during Passover, Jesus was being nailed to the cross at the exact same time of day. The Passover lamb had to be examined for spots and blemishes. And Jesus had to be examined by Pilate. And he was found to be without sin, without spot, without blemish. In addition to that, it said the lamb, when you're preparing it for Passover, none of its bones could be broken. And when we know it was common when you were crucified that they would have to break your legs, but it says of Jesus that none of his bones were broken because he is our Passover lamb. In addition to that, while they were cooking the lamb, it said they put it on a spit that was shaped like a crossbar. And just like the lamb was on a crossbar being roasted over a fire, so Jesus was being crucified on a cross. And the whole lamb had to be roasted and consumed. And Jesus, when he took our sin upon him, he was consumed under the wrath and fire of God's judgment. And he took that upon him. And what's beautiful about the Passover lamb is the whole point of the lamb was so that judgment would pass over them and it would go to that lamb. And that is who Jesus is. He is the Passover lamb who took our sin upon him, was crucified for us and by us, and God's judgment goes on him and it passes over each one of us. How are you able to live a life of sacrifice? You can live a life of sacrifice because Jesus showed us how. And what he demonstrates to us is what he expects of us, that it's not our will, it's his. And the moment I struggle to sacrifice, I have to look no further than the sacrifice of the Son of God for me. When I see Jesus as my Passover lamb, whatever God asks of me, I can do that. Whether small or whether big, I can follow the sacrifice of my Savior.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I hope you enjoyed this message you just heard. For more information and other content, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and hit that bell icon as well so you can be notified every time we upload something new on our channel. Now, while you're here, go ahead and check out past messages and other videos, and we'll see you next time.